welcome back. It has been a full year and a couple of weeks since I have created a podcast and posted it up here. And there have been some major changes, but first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for your patience and your consideration over the last year. I did not mean to drop off the face of the earth. And as this podcast name suggests, I've spent the last year really diving into a space of recovery. And so I'm going to share that with you today, this space of recovery, kind of what was going on, what happened, and the few key things that I have learned, as well as the new direction and the new name of this podcast and the new direction of my business. So if you are new here or you need a refresher, hi, my name is Taylor Proctor, and I am so excited to be here today because, as I said, it's been a hot minute since I have created a new episode. And that's not to say that I haven't been busy doing things. I have, but I had some things happen at the very end of 2020 that really kind of shook me to my core, and I needed to take some time to recover. And I needed to figure out a couple of things before I felt like I could confidently step back in front of the camera and in front of the mic and share with you what has been going on. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, it took me a year and a couple of extra weeks to come to this point of being able to share what happened and my process of recovery in that, and to be here with you again now. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your patience. And I'm excited to dive in. So first and foremost, you might have seen the name change. The Happiness Abound podcast, 530 plus episodes, is now shifted. We are no longer Happiness Abound, but we are Creating with Confidence. And the reason behind that is that in this past year, I realized that happiness was an amazing thing, and I know a lot about it, 500 plus episodes worth and then some, but it wasn't really suiting what I needed it to be for a new direction of my business. And that new direction was really triggered and instigated by that event that happened at the end of 2020. So the event that happened in 2020, some of you may know and may recall, I was leading an international, multilingual, global marketing team, and that was going great, or so I thought. And at the end of 2020, there was quite a few things that happened that made me realize that it was time to move on from that role. And as I look back now, I have understood about myself that I was giving everything, right? There was no downtime. It was back-to-back meetings, and I was giving 150% if I could, right? But definitely 100% of myself, my emotions, my intelligence, my time, my energy, all of that was going towards this job. And a lot of that was centered around the fact that I also had spent the whole year of 2020 trying to recoup and recover from a loss of a team lead at the beginning of 2020. And so I spent some time in Scotland. You may remember those few podcast episodes. And I came back to a crapshoot. I came back to a team of the many teams that I had led, but I came back to a team that the culture was shot. Nobody trusted leadership and the leaders of that team, and that all cycled up to me. And I ended up having to make some hard decisions at the beginning of 2020 regarding team leadership, and had to step in and lead the team right as 2020's COVID and everything else started happening. And so I stepped into a team lead role, really trying to recoup the team culture and the trust and the camaraderie and everything that I'd worked so hard to build for the team originally in a team lead position, plus my director position. And I spent a lot of time trying to build that up. And then of course, COVID hit, Here in Salt Lake City, we had an earthquake that hit. We had to change the roles of our team to be able to accommodate for other customer support teams that were out of the country and had limited access to their computers and things with COVID lockdowns and shutdowns. So our team had to change everything that we were doing to then support that in the interim, and just one thing after another, after another, after another. So I spent all of 2020 really trying to get things in a good space with one of the teams of my multiple team, but also really trying to get things back on track and trying to figure out how we can work through all these changes all happening at once. As I mentioned, within that, I gave up myself. I was still creating podcast episodes. I was still talking about Happiness Abound, but I was giving my whole heart and soul to this department and this team and the teams within the department. And at the end of 2020, when yet another thing happened and arose that was like, okay, we got to focus on this, we got to get through this, we got to do all these things, it just became too much. And an opportunity came my way to take another position. And frankly, I leapt at the chance because I was ready. And I couldn't have told you why I was ready when it all happened. I loved my team. I loved what we were doing. I loved all of these things, but I started to feel completely burnt out and completely drained and couldn't have told you why. And as I look back, I think to myself, oh, I don't know who I would be if I had kept going down that path. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity of another opportunity to come in and give me an option to see that there was a broader perspective and a broader world. Which brings me to my year of recovery, 2021. The year where I stopped doing podcast episodes, the year where I completely changed the entire direction of my business and really brought together a full view of me. Now, it wasn't easy. No recovery is. It took me several months to be calmed down enough, slowed down enough to actually feel all the things I had just pushed to the side because how I felt about things didn't matter. I needed to be there for my team. I was just pushed aside so many emotions and so many thoughts and so many things that were mine for the sake of my team during just one thing after another, after another, after another, after another, that I had a whole year of emotions and traumatic responses and all these other things that I had just pushed to the side. So in my year of recovery, it took me several months of just slowing down, not working 14-hour days with back-to-back meetings between the hours of 8 and 6 and all these other pieces, and trying to do the jobs of my role and a team lead role in the middle of all of that, right? And so I had to slow down and figure out what actually had happened, how I actually felt about all those things, and process a lot of emotions. And the reason that I didn't create any podcast during that time was because it's really difficult to share these happiness tips. And I've always been honest. I've always said, this is what's going on, this is what I'm going through, and this is how I'm going to be working through it. But this was a whole new space for me. Because on top of that, there was an identity shift. Who am I if I'm not leading a huge team? And now that 30-person team is huge to a lot of people, it may be to some, maybe not to others, but to me, we had grown to that point. In a 3-year span, we went from starting the department that I was ahead of to get 6 team members. And in a 3-year span, we had taken that up to 30 and international and multilingual and all of these things. And so I was extremely proud of that. But my whole identity was wrapped up in it. And so when I made the shift to this other opportunity, I didn't have a team. It was just me. And so I had to kind of get back into the trenches of things, but I could go at it at a slower pace. I wasn't constantly trying to navigate the politics and the emotions and all of these things across and the culture across a team that I was in charge of. So it took some time for me to really understand that, but I didn't feel confident in stepping in front of the camera anymore. I didn't feel confident to hop on the mic and say, this is what's going on, which is really a struggle. To put aside something that I've built, not just the department that I built, but actually the podcast and being here for you guys. And I'm sorry for the gap in communication on that. But when I had the chance to slow down, when I had the chance to see and figure out who I was if I wasn't leading a huge team, I started to realize that Happiness Abound was one component of my life. I had spent so much time and effort and energy building up the transformational happiness mentoring side of my life. But as you heard, I led a global marketing team. And I have 13 plus years of experience in marketing. And the clients that I worked with for happiness mentoring, 9 times out of 10 would be other coaches and business owners. And we'd get everything worked out in their happiness habits and all of these pieces. And then they would say, man, I just need to figure out like my marketing for my business. And I feel like everything would just be awesome and just take off. And I'd be like, oh, side note, I know a little bit about marketing and I have this whole other life. And so in my business, I decided to start to blend things. I decided to start to blend my two passions of coaching and mentoring, and specifically content and social media marketing. And that's why we've had this shift in Happiness Abound to be more about helping coaches. Developed a program called the Content Cure, which is a 6-week, I almost said 6 months. It's a 6-week content marketing program helping coaches and course creators learn how to confidently create content that actually converts. Going deep into content marketing strategies and all these things, but also coaching on the confidence side, which really pulled into the happiness mentoring and building up the habits and the trust and all those things. But also pushing that forward, I kept on learning more about myself. I learned that I wanted to integrate those two sides. I created the Content Cure program, but I also felt a little bit like a fraud because here I am teaching other people how to confidently be on camera, and I'm like, I need to create a podcast episode. I need to do this. And I just kept on putting it off. But that's because I needed to do some more healing. So I started to really dive in to my thoughts, my limiting beliefs, and trying to figure out who I am. Not just without a team, but who am I really? Because I said I had 13 plus years of corporate marketing experience, and my job was everything. So who was I without the team, but who was I when I wasn't going 110 miles an hour? Who was I when I was happy but still struggling with things? Who was I when I had my happiness habits, but I didn't know who I was? And so I've spent this last year really trying to dive into those limiting beliefs, really trying to dive into those things that, those thoughts, the language I was using that had been holding me back and telling me who I was, but in a negative light, instead of actually just letting me be. And in that process, I have to say, my levels of self-trust, which had been completely tarnished because I had gone from one tragedy, one emergency, one big traumatic thing to another for over a year, my confidence was shot. And I started to learn that your confidence isn't about the achievements that you do. And confidence doesn't necessarily mean happiness. But confidence is in knowing who you are, knowing your strengths, trusting your intuition, all things that I had never played in before. Like, I knew I had some strengths, but I didn't know what they all were. And I never followed my intuition because who could trust that when you're so busy moving all these things? And so I spent this last year really starting to understand my intuition, understanding myself, trusting my strengths, building my confidence back up into me, Not building my confidence on achievements, not building my confidence on a team member or a coaching client saying, oh, you're so awesome, but building my confidence on me, on who I am inside. And that took some time. But I'm proud to say, which I can now get on camera and say, is that the levels of self-trust, the levels of self-confidence, all of those things that I've taken and gotten from this year of recovery have been huge. And that is another reason for the shift, right? We're no longer Happiness Abound. This podcast is Creating with Confidence. Because moving forward, yes, all the things that we talked about with Happiness Abound completely still apply. And I'm still using them all the time. But I want to create with confidence, whether that's creating content for my business, whether that's creating the life that I want, whether that's creating the income that I want, the results that I want, but creating all of that with a sense of confidence that it's going to work out. Creating all of that with confidence that the universe has my back. Confidence that I know my strengths that I can tap into to help me get there. And that is why we've made the name change for the podcast to Creating with Confidence. And my business used to be called Happiness Abound, which matched the podcast name. But now it is just Taylor Proctor International. Because I also didn't want to be limited anymore by just talking about happiness. Because as I mentioned, we started integrating these two parts of me. And it's really like a triangle, right? So there was the happiness mentoring, personal development piece, there's the content marketing piece, and then there's me. And I had to step into all three of those to create this new business, which Happiness Abound fit only 1/3 of it. So we've named it Taylor Proctor International so that we have room to play, room to grow, room to pull in all these other things, which I'm proud to announce now not only includes one-on-one mentoring, both for life mentoring, but also business and marketing and operations mentoring, but also the Content Cure, our 6-week program, the book club, which is still going strong, and those personal development books have really helped me in that last year as well. But then adding a new piece, the Intuitive Strengths Business Blueprint, which is an opportunity for me to intuitively tap in, with your permission of course, to your top strengths. And it's specifically your top strengths in the areas that are most important for business success. And that is knowing and trusting your most authentic self, your wealth calibration, your inspirational alignment, your strengths in creativity and communication, and finally, your top strength in business strategy. If you can know your top strengths in those 5 areas, and you can lean on those strengths, you can know how to use them, you can know how to make them bigger, better, stronger, you know how to tap into them at the right moment, your business can soar and your life can soar and you can create with confidence. So that is a new element of the business that I wouldn't have been able to fit in if I had Happiness Abound and I was trying to fit in the content marketing and the business piece, but really it all comes together where it's all about personal development, marketing for your business, and ultimately self-trust. So it's really the blend of those things, the integration of all of that, that is the reflection of the business. But it's also been an integration of me, integration of my happiness habits, integration of understanding who I actually am, integration of trusting my intuition, building myself and my self-trust, trusting my business strengths and my intuitive strengths in general, and being able to market that and take it to those next levels, because I love creating. I love creating content. I love creating conversations. I love the creation process, which is hilarious because without this year of recovery, I wouldn't have known that. I was so busy creating things and then putting out fires that I wasn't taking a step back and actually seeing what I enjoyed, what made my heart soar, what made me so excited to get up in the morning. And it is that ability to create. But because my confidence was shot, I had to spend a year recovering and building that back up and truly understanding so that I could create with confidence. So that is today's episode. Really kind of a long story. I hope you stuck with me. Thanks for tracking along. But also kind of a framework of this is what you can expect going forward. Our episodes are going to be talking about creating with confidence, whether that's creating the business, the life, the relationships, the money, the content, right? Creating with confidence. So we're also going to be talking about self-trust. We'll still be talking about happiness habits. We'll be talking about routines, emotional releasing, all of those other components to really help you shift to creating whatever it is that you desire and being okay with wanting what you desire, right? And doing it with confidence. So that said, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning back in, or if this is your first time seeing the podcast or seeing the podcast on YouTube or listening to the podcast on your podcast listening of choice or listening platform of choice, thank you so much for joining in and staying here to the end. If you liked this episode, please let me know. It is the first episode of Creating with Confidence and really kind of the last episode of the Happiness Abound piece. And so if you've gotten any value from our podcast episodes in the past, or you just really liked my story today and you're excited about the direction we're going, please let me know. You can like, share, leave a review, or even go and comment on Creating with Confidence on Instagram, Facebook, etc. So that said, have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, you can create with confidence.